So,
Is there
first of all,
anyone?
I want to do a quick introduction, and I want to start with, I asked you guys to introduce yourselves, so I'll introduce myself. My name's Garrett Lang. I'm a software developer turned award-winning software inventor in North Jersey. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, and my hobby is writing and discussing practical philosophy, which includes politics, because these people make the laws. So that's very practical. And that led me to become the executive director of the Free Thinker Institute. I'm going to post a link for people to learn more about the FTI in the chat. Um, and basically, I can't do two things at once, which is why I have Kyle moderating the text chat because I can't do that. Um, yeah, Stephen was not able to make it tonight, unfortunately, so he had to bow out. I just saw that in the text chat, um, but basically, we're the FTI is a not-for-profit looking to support and empower members. We want to help members focus on always being polite, being the best version of ourselves, to seek truth and to be fair through transformational personal and professional development. We have free events like this one every Tuesday evening, covering a wide range of topics not typically covered in academia or industry. We also have weekly members only events where we apply practical wisdom into our daily lives. And we have in-person events in North Jersey and New York City on a regular basis. I'm going to put my email in the chat for anyone that is in North Jersey um, and there seems to be some, Kyle, please moderate that in the chat. And then we have only one rule in the FTI, and that will apply to both the text as well as the spoken portion of the evening, and that is to remain polite. Um, all free speech is welcome, but it must be polite speech in this format, and that's because we want people to listen to each other. No one listens to someone that's rude. It's not a way you're going to convince anyone of anything. And quite frankly, tonight is not about convincing anyone of anything. It's about understanding each other better. And I would argue that more discussion should be focused on understanding each other better rather than on you're right, you're wrong, and I'm right, and this is why, which I call the logic hammer. I try to avoid that. I will, if I have time, I have a series of questions I want to ask, and some of them are pointed because I'm having trouble understanding why people support Trump too. We've done a lot of events in the FTI, and there are a lot of things that I just can't explain, like how, and even one of the Trump supporters said some of the things are just not defendable. And maybe that's other people's opinions. Maybe some people think everything is defendable. That's what we're here, and everybody has different opinions, and that's something that one of the folks who wasn't here tonight mentioned is that different people support Trump for different reasons. And I think it's important to realize that this is not one cohesive, monotonic, you know, uh, or homogenous group. And so one thing that I wanted to do is start from what I think is some common ground. And this is actually the common values of the Free Thinker Institute. And so I'm going to kind of show those values, and I'm going to ask Peter and Sean and Paul if they agree with those values, because I think this will be like a common vernacular that we can use tonight to communicate with each other in a more effective way. And so let me pull this up. So first is that we have what we call the six intentions, which are things that I would argue we should all be intending to do all the time. And the first one is to always be polite, to be the best version of ourselves, to seek truth, not just seek to be right, but to seek the truth. Even if we don't understand it today, we want to understand where we're wrong and get closer to the actual truth, and to be fair. Do any of you like this, disagree with it? Does this sound pretty agreeable? Thumbs up,
Sounds
thumbs
great.
down. All right, cool. So the second intention is that we should transparently share our beliefs tonight with other people, and we should listen to those people with an open mind because they may have ways of helping us be more polite, be a better version of ourselves, get closer to truth, or be more fair. Does that sound about right?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Cool. Then we want to hone our critical thinking skills because I would argue we shouldn't just trust other people on blind faith. We should listen with an open mind, but then we need to use our critical thinking skills to decide what's fact, what's fiction, what's wisdom, what's folly, reject the folly and falsehood, and then accept the facts and wisdom. Wisdom, I will describe exactly what I mean by wisdom in the next three intentions. And that way, our current beliefs create this virtuous cycle of thoughts that get better and better over time. Does that sound pretty agreeable?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
Yes.
next is that we should all use those virtuous cycle of thoughts to perform ethical actions. And the first of those is that we should prevent significant unnecessary harm from happening
Stop.
to all human beings, full stop.
I'll
Um,
resume. Yeah, I said that was good.
just remember to keep yourselves on mute if you're not
Hello.
talking. Um, and yeah, I made a bunch of people moderators. If you're able to help moderate that, it would be great. Um, so, um, so prevent significant unnecessary harm from happening to all human beings, full stop. And then once we do that, we should increase happiness and decrease harm for the people we can influence, with a priority being on those we can influence the most because we can have the greatest effect there. Do those two intentions sound pretty agreeable?
They sound good, but on a debate, not debate, but a topic like this, I can imagine some people are going to be triggered. But I will do my best to be nice and polite and funny.
Cool.
Jason,
You don't have to be funny. You can be as long as it's not at
only
anyone's
he's
expense.
definitely
Humor
Oh,
lightens
sure
the
thing.
definitely.
Sure thing.
um, humor lightens things up when it gets heavy. So next is to express, accept, and reciprocate love, both platonic as well as romantic, because I would argue that's where, that's kind of the icing on the cake. Once we have people we know and we trust and that are, mutually like caring about each other, then, love is kind of a great place to sort of make a relationship deeper and more meaningful. So it sounds like we agree on these basic values. What I think is interesting, and that our normally liberal audience generally agrees with these values as well. So what I want to say is that our common values, these are also not meaningless, by the way. I have a bot that you can ask any question and it will tell you based on these values, like what is the ethical thing to do in that situation. Which if you go to the link that I put in the chat about the Free Thinker Institute, the bot is linked there. So I highly encourage people to check that out. It's trained on nothing other than a detailed description of these values. And so because we all agree with these values, I think it might be interesting to play around with that bot and just ask it some questions. And if you disagree with the bot, send me that feedback. You have my email, because maybe it made a mistake, right? No one has yet, but I'm sure that, humans make mistakes and so do bots. So I'm sure there could be a mistake somewhere. So that said, now we have common like values that we can talk about in this conversation. But first, I want to sort of open things up to some basic questions to sort of understand. Where are my notes? To understand sort of the perspective of why, there we go. Um, And by the way, I want to mention that I want to try to reflect back what I think I understand from your guys' answers so that, you guys can hold me accountable if I'm not doing that well. Don't always do my reflective listening the way I want to. I like moderation, but I also like, peer mentoring. That's what we do in the FTI as members. So first, I want to understand, like, at a high level, what is it that Trump represents that you do like that you don't see in other politicians? And anyone can answer that that's on the panel.
He's willing to, excuse me, he's willing to say and do things that traditionally other leaders have refused to say and do in a politically incorrect way. In other words, almost every leader to this point has been very measured, refuses to answer questions straight because they're worried about how the soundbite's going to play and things like that. Donald Trump is very different. He's like somebody who shoots from the hip, doesn't consider the implications of his words, and he says stupid things and sometimes he says brilliant things. But either way, he doesn't really worry about public opinion or how the news services are going to play him the next day.
I would agree with Paul. I don't think he is as calculated as or scheming as some other politicians I've seen, and in some ways that makes him very crass, makes him boorish. I'm sure these are the things that many people find very distasteful about him. But you're never in the dark about what he really thinks about a thing. And I think he's also very good at standing up to bullies or and standing up to propaganda, standing up to, especially when the whole media will come out and label him one thing or another, or there are huge narrative arcs being pushed to make him, apologize or walk something back. He does not seem to give an inch on that, and he just does kind of whatever he thinks is right. Now, that's there are areas where I don't agree with him, where I think he's making the wrong move, but he has a very strong foundation and has confidence in his abilities, and I think that plays well towards his leadership when he's working with other countries, other business people. He's unpredictable, and that makes him somewhat strong and able to get things done.
So you
Those
said
are
he's
those are
willing
the
to
short ones. I could go on,
No,
but
no, no. Let's keep it summarized so that we can get to a lot of information. So you said he stands up to bullies. Can you give an example of a bully he stood up to?
sure. I would say any press conference, there's going to be five or six different journalists who are going to be peppering him or needling him with kind of gotcha type of questions. And he doesn't really, if he knows that they're trying to insinuate something, he will push back pretty firmly.
Didn't he call, was it one of those journalists that he called a piggy?
I think he did. Yes.
So would would that not be in some respects, like, is that a respectful way to address another person? Or
Of course not. I don't think he
okay.
follows your pillars.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. He hasn't read them yet. You could share them with him.
That's true. Maybe he needs to use the bot,
Yeah, he
make
does. He
his
needs the
decisions
bot.
via
Trust
that.
me. He and the bot could have a great time together.
I think if you're going to judge Donald Trump on whether or not he follows your pillars, I think you're going to be disappointed.
No, I won't be disappointed. I'll just know what he follows and what he doesn't follow. I won't be disappointed. I try not to be disappointed at just about anything.
Fair enough.
Um, so I'd like to say keep your hopes high and your disappointment low. It's the only way to go, and I try to live by that. But I do recognize people for what they are, and when you're in a position of power and you belittle another person who's asking you a thoughtful question, like for me, that comes across a little bullying. But I guess
I'd have to look up what if that was a thoughtful question that was being asked by the woman that he called that name.
It
But
was
I think it's
oh,
very true that he is can be very crass. He can be insulting. I think they were one of my favorite tweets from him was when I think it was Kim Jong-un was threatening to send nuclear weapons or something like that, or he called him stupid. He says it's it's a shame he called me stupid. I would never call him short and fat or something like that. He he's one of the funniest presidents we've ever had, whether you like it or not. I find him to be, and for the longest time, and I will get into this, I'm a liberal. I voted Democrat my whole life, up until, including in 2016. It wasn't until 2020 that I voted for him. And over time, I originally had many of the same thoughts and concerns that I'm sure many of you had, where I thought he was crass. I thought he was a bit out there. I thought he was unqualified and unpredictable. But over time, all of the narratives that he was a secret Russian agent, that he was Hitler, that he was going to take over and never give way and be the new Caesar, it's all kind of melted away, and I've realized that that is not who the guy is.
are you aware of the attempt to implement the Insurrection Act at the end of his first term?
Tell me more about that.
So Donald Trump tried to implement the Insurrection Act, which basically said that there wasn't going to be a peaceful transition of power, and the military literally told him, "We will not back you on that." So he actually did try to prevent himself from losing power through force the first time, and then followed by that was the January 6th, where first he tried to do it through political force, and then second he tried to do it through physical force with the January 6th riots. But I meant to get to that later tonight.
Well,
Not quite
we'll
yet.
get to January 6th, but there's
Yeah.
also the fake electors scheme, and there's a lot of other things that are around there. But I'm sure we will get to that. That's the thing that everyone jumps to right away is January 6th. So
Well, there might be a reason for that. Do you know why people jump to that?
sure, because it's a scary thing. It's
Okay.
a and it's a very unpresidential thing in many ways. But
Right.
when we get to that,
Okay. We'll definitely
Let's
come
not
back
open
to it.
with January 6th.
No, no, I agree. I agree. That's not a friendly way to open. So, um, what are the top reasons that you supported Donald Trump? And maybe if each of you could say the absolute most important reason that you support him. And
Can
let's
I?
go. Go ahead.
I'd also like to riff off a few things that Sean said too. For the bully thing,
Sure.
I think the reason, if I had to guess, the reason why people sort of like that he's a bully is because the idea is that he's going to go bully Iran and go bully other countries or North Korea, like you said. Now, do I think honestly? I think Kamala Harris's administration would have bombed Iran too. Maybe I'm wrong, but the other thing is kind of that interview thing where he called the reporter Miss Piggy or something like that. It was the question was about which this again probably won't be one of the first topics. It was about the Epstein files, which that's going to be a whole thing we talk about, obviously. But I think that people enjoy seeing kind of the lashback, especially after being kind of like social justice policed. They don't want to be told that they're like racist and that for even asking a question about immigration, or that they're transphobic for even asking a question about trans issues and what that means for society, I guess. So I think that's the perception. We could certainly debate whether that's reality, but that's true of anything, I suppose. And I think the main thing that I personally see in him is that he's non-establishment. I'm not really too. I'm a little skeptical that Mamdani is going to be successful, but I'm actually kind of glad that he won. And I think a lot of liberal people probably who either support Trump or are okay with him would probably be fine with a more non-establishment candidate running and then winning on the left side too, like Bernie Sanders. I think there's some overlap there. So that's just my thoughts on that. I forgot what your other question was, Garrett.
I was just
I was
wondering
trying to organize
what it
all
is
that.
that you like about Trump the most. Like, what's the number one reason? If you had to like say this is something that no one could possibly contest, it's just so important and good that Trump believes in and is trying to make happen. What is that thing that you think is just so sacred that how could anyone even disagree with it? Yeah,
Mm.
Sean.
Sure. I don't want to dominate, but I know there's only a few of us here. No, I would say the number one thing is Trump was the bulwark against the we'll get into the definition of woke, I'm sure, but the kind of woke cultural revolution that was kind of going on in America. And he was able to stand up to it. And I think a lot of it is to some of the other qualities I've mentioned about him before. It was a very big thing happening, and it was something that most politicians didn't know how to handle in any other type of way. And
I do want you to define that, by the way. Woke cultural revolution.
yeah, you want me to do it right now?
Yeah, please.
It was coming up. Okay, so woke often you could shorten it to intersectional identity politics, but a good version of it is it means being awakened to a critical consciousness, understood through the lens of critical social justice. This usually sees the world through unjust power dynamics and has a need to dismantle problematic systems. Is an intersectional identity politics, which sorts the world through oppressors and the oppressed with a strategic evolution from Marxist class theory, but replaces economic class with race, gender, LGBTQ status, etc. And its intention is a revolution from the
Before
liberal order through institutional and cultural capture.
before you finish, you already finished, but where did you get that definition?
I put it together from a couple of different sources I have.
Could you give me
James,
the primary sources? Because that's not actually the definition of anyone I know that calls themselves woke.
okay,
That's not the one that
that's
they use. So I think that's a definition that doesn't actually align with the people who consider themselves woke.
I
And
would
I consider
challenge that.
myself, I
you're
consider
talking.
myself woke, by the way. So I can say
I
for
Okay,
would I
myself
would
100%
strongly,
certain.
Garrett, I would strongly challenge that assertion.
Well, I'm telling you right now, from my own perspective, I can tell you that's not the definition that I use.
Well, let
how
me
about
ask you
this?
a question.
How about
Let
how
me
about
ask
And
this?
I also looked up the definition of woke, and it was not that. So I can give you a primary source definition from the dictionary, and it's not at all what you're talking about.
I
Okay.
I
Well,
don't think
you're
that's yeah. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go
I,
ahead.
do, I don't think any modern citation for what woke means is going to be adequate. I think a word needs a lot more usage and a lot more analysis, and I'm certain that the university system is not up to the task. I would simplify Sean's definition of woke to something very simple. And it's a bigoted assumption that people who are woke have, and that is that race or gender carries with it bigoted assumptions that forms the basis of policy and law. Therefore, Garrett, if I asked you a question, should we have affirmative action or should we give extra assistance to somebody based on skin color or gender? And anybody who answers yes to that definition, I believe, conforms entirely to the more complex definition that Sean gave.
Doesn't that sound like an oversimplification? Because
No, I don't think so.
yeah, I
I
think it
think
is.
because one,
I don't conform to that, by the way, just to be
okay,
clear. I don't I believe that affirmative action should be socioeconomically based, not race based. So, and I've said that since the 1990s, by the way, so I've been anti-affirmative action since then.
but
Um,
you accept you're in a very small minority on the left that believes that, right?
No, everybody I talk to about that, when I say this is a better way to do it than race-based, they agree with me because I give them good logical reasons that it's better and ultimately it's more fair because
Well,
otherwise you're just
what
being
is
racist.
DEI then?
What's that?
What is
That's not what
DEI
DEI
then?
is. I'll basically DEI is about preventing discrimination. That's all it's about. It's not about.
That is
It's
so
literally
that
about. I
okay.
did a whole event on it. You'll have to understand that this is something that we spent 2 hours on, and it was discussed, very much at length. And I can pull up the definition of. And by the way, when you use a definition like woke, if you're going to use a definition owned by a group of people, what source do you think is the most appropriate to use? Is it to use it of the critics of that perspective, or is it to use it of the people who wear that perspective as a badge and say this is who we are? Like, if you define yourself as a Trump supporter, should I define what you mean by a Trump supporter, or should you define what you mean by a Trump supporter? Which one
Your
is more appropriate?
your identity is external. So what's more appropriate is the people who are criticizing woke and they are giving a definition why they are critical of somebody who calls themselves woke. I cannot conceive of any policy that would be called DEI that would not make bigoted assumptions. I mean, even the way you described it, it sounds okay, but try translating it into a law or a policy, and you absolutely have to choose based on race and gender. So
Let
I
me
think
ask,
there's a disagreement. There's a disagreement on the disagreement, right?
well,
And that's a big problem.
let me ask,
Yes,
like,
and I jump in here for a second, Garrett?
sure.
I don't think it's really fair, Garrett, to say, well, we all know what DEI is because I did a 2 hour video of it and just go refer to that.
No, I use sources like in the industry that are what DEI organizations talk about what DEI is and that what is taught. And I've been taught DEI by, like various organizations that supported DEI. So I know it from both personal experience, from research. And what I'm saying is, listen, just listen to me for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. If I let the people here who are anti-Trump define what a Trump supporter is, what would you guys think about that? Would you agree with their definition?
I don't think you are going to get me to say that woke people get to define woke as just being, I'm against racism and I'm against sexism and I just want people to be treated nicely. I agree that that's the nice veneer that they put on things like that. And I'm sure there are many people who fit that criteria and just think, they're not super politically involved and they just hear that and they're like, I don't want to be a racist. And I don't want to be a racist. I don't want to be a sexist or any of those type of things. But I come from a place where I worked in corporations that did implement DEI, very strong DEI policies after 2020 when everybody was going for it. And what came with it was segregation among races and identity groups There was privilege walks, talks about your white privilege, talks about implicit bias and how you were secretly racist, even though you didn't know it. And you needed to admit that anytime there was a conflict between you and different identity groups. It was divisive and toxic, and it made the area not more diverse or welcoming, which were things we already had. I'm in Chicago. It's a very liberal type of place, and we had people from all over, and nobody was racist. Nobody was discriminatory. But this heightened those type of feelings and made everybody look at things through the lens of oppressor and oppressed. And, are you a white man to a black woman? Are you talking this way to a gay person? It must be because you're homophobic. It did not help things. And to just wave it away as if this is just simply being nice and not racist, I think
Right. I want to ask again, if people here that don't like Trump supporters defined what it means to be a Trump supporter, would you guys like that? You didn't answer.
The focus is
Oh,
on
that
why
wouldn't
Trump
bother me at all.
Give me,
supporters.
That wouldn't
guys, we're
uh,
asking questions here. I want to understand your perspective.
sure.
So
Sure.
tell me
We're
whether or
trying to
not that
give
would be
you,
fair.
Garrett, we're trying to give you our perspective, but you're challenging our
You
perspective.
didn't answer my question. I can't
I'll
hear
answer
your
your question
perspective if I don't
directly.
hear your answer.
I'll answer your question directly.
Yeah,
Your question was, is it fair for people who aren't Trump supporters to define what a Trump supporter is?
correct.
That happened. Is it fair?
Yeah,
Not really, because I think each individual person is different. I'm sure, Garrett, if I asked you claim to be woke, and I asked you about woke things, you would probably give me a much nicer and softer definition, on many of which parts of it I would agree with, right?
I'm not
But
so good at
I
soft
can't help.
definitions, Sean.
What's that? No,
I'm
but I
not
would
so
say
good at soft definitions. I'm a pretty straightforward guy. I'm not
fair enough.
political.
Fair enough, but people define what Trump supporters are all the time. I think that's the whole
They
point of this
do. But do you
discussion, is
like
because
that?
it's
Do you
become very
like
close.
being grouped into that group of people that are
I've gotten
vilified as being horrible human beings for supporting Trump?
I've gotten over it.
Well, does that mean that it's fair? Do you like it? Do you think
No,
that
it's
that's,
not.
do
It's
you
not
think that
fair,
we
but
should, just let me
it's
finish. Do you think
yeah.
that that's officially the way we should define Trump supporters?
No, I
Do
think
you
it's
think that people
Can
using
I
that
try?
definition of
There's a
Trump
huge
supporters,
fallacy happening here, and that is if you try to define what a Trump supporter is, a Trump supporter can clarify and say, no, you're corrected. This is why I'm a Trump supporter.
correct?
The problem with DEI and the discussion we're having about people who are woke is I actually believe I can drill down and I can ask a person questions that will lead back directly to Sean's definition. And I'll give you one right now. How many people who are leftists in this group or in the country would say Joe Biden claiming the only qualified person for the Supreme Court is a black woman? How many would agree with that statement? Okay. I would say I would estimate most Democrats agreed that was perfectly fine. However, that statement is woke and absolutely aligns in every single way with Sean's definition. It is a bigoted assumption that a black woman was disadvantaged, therefore only a black woman can be on the Supreme Court. And this is the discussion we're trying to have. I'm trying to drill down to what you actually believe. And
No, you're
when
actually
I
not.
do
You're
this to
telling
the
me what I
leftists,
believe, even though I don't agree with that statement.
I haven't
I don't
asked
think,
I haven't
I
asked
don't
you
think,
questions yet.
I don't think she was the only qualified candidate. I think Joe Biden said that for political reasons,
Do
not
you
because it
agree
was
with the
absolutely
statement?
true.
Do you agree with that action?
Do I agree with her being on the Supreme Court?
No, no, no. Do you agree with Joe Biden only making a black woman qualified for the Supreme Court?
Not what he
I
said.
just said I don't agree she was the only person qualified to be on the Supreme Court.
That's not the question I asked you.
What are you asking?
Do you agree with Joe Biden's statement and intent to only nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court?
How many times do people nominate more than one person to the Supreme Court at once? They don't do that. They nominate the
At,
person they want to be there.
at that
Garrett,
particular
the
time,
question's very simple.
at that
Okay.
particular
I
time.
answered the
Do
question twice, and you seem to be not
no,
understanding my answer. But I said, you asked if I agree with the statement. I already said two times that I don't agree with the statement.
you
We're going to
don't.
move on,
Okay.
Paul. So my point is,
I,
you guys wouldn't like it if I used tonight a definition of Trump supporters that is
Garrett,
made by people who are anti-Trump. So I will ask you
if
guys, when
Yeah,
you use a
Garrett, hang on.
definition of woke,
Yeah,
use the
Garrett,
Garrett,
you're
definition.
missing. You've missed Paul's point.
Yeah. And Garrett, you asked me what is the strongest reason
Right,
that I voted against, voted for Trump. What's he
right,
stand for? And I said he's a bulwark towards the woke cultural revolution.
right,
And you said, well, what does woke mean? And I gave
right.
you a definition. And you said that's not what woke is.
Right. Well, the point is that your main reason for liking Trump, the one you said is incontroversial, like that no one could possibly argue with, is
Okay.
based on a false premise. You're defining for woke people what woke
Says
people are.
you.
That's
Says
But
you.
ridiculous.
but aren't you defining for woke people what it means to be woke when woke people wouldn't agree with that
Yeah.
definition?
If I give
Okay.
I gave a definition, and if it doesn't apply to you, don't take offense. I'm not
Well,
applying. I'm
I'm
not
not
directing it
offended,
towards you,
Sean. I'm
Garrett.
just
can you
I
curious
mean,
analyze?
why
Garrett,
Can you
you.
Garrett,
analyze his? Can you analyze his definition instead of telling him he's wrong? This entire time you're
Concentrating
saying,
on the
well,
word is
why don't
missing
you
the point.
analyze
It's
what he
very
said?
clear that no one is Marxist. Very few, very small percentage of people in America are Marxist. Very small percentage.
New
I
York City.
I live in Chicago. I went to a Bill Ayers event over here, Weather Underground. There are flyers all over here about this. What are you talking about?
We've got
Maybe where
two.
you
We
live,
can we can look up.
maybe
I
locally
lived
that's
in
not
New
the
York
case.
City for a decade, and I didn't meet one actual Marxist.
I mean, Garrett, if you
Are you still raising hands?
Yeah, can I
We're
answer that? Can I
Or
answer
you
your
have
question? I want to tell you why I
we're
voted for
we're
Donald
doing
Trump.
here, guys. I'm asking questions for the first 30 minutes or so, and then we're gonna have
Okay.
hands after that. So, we started 15 minutes late, so in about 8 minutes
But
we'll
I'm
start going through
trying to
hands.
interject
Oh,
and
I'm
it's
sorry.
not
Thank you, Yana.
possible.
Yana, thank
Yeah,
you. I forgot to talk about how we do this. So if
yes.
someone makes a comment, anyone is allowed to jump in, for 20 seconds or less. You can jump in whenever you want as soon as someone finishes talking. So I apologize. I forgot to say that. That's kind of ground rules for us in these events so that we can get everybody being able to contribute. So hopefully that doesn't become chaos with now we're maxed out at 99 people. So
But we have to interrupt because there is no pausing at all. So the only
Yeah,
way
I've
to
been trying to
interject
jump
is
in.
to have a pause, and we are just holding hand like for the last half an hour
Well, the
without
hands are for
opportunity.
when you start a new topic, or
Right.
you wanna ask a question. So the
Mm-hmm.
hands are going to come in another 8 minutes, but
Okay.
right now it's just jump in for a 20-second,
Yeah,
interjection.
I want just to answer your question
Which
because what I hear from many left, and I want to define left, right, totally two different definitions. Right wing or moderate, they support platform. Left wing attacks his personality. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Yana.
So I,
Go ahead, Peter.
I feel like we're kind of running around in circles here a little bit. I don't think I kind of see where you're both coming from, but it's not like fair for me to say like, oh, this person I saw on Twitter who advocated for white genocide is woke because they said so, and then say that Garrett believes that. But it's not fair for anyone to hear to say, oh, January 6th, that's what Peter's all about, and that it's just not like there's people who have whatever you want to call it, like maybe wacko ideas. And there's definitely Marxists out there too.
A
Are they
few, but
well
it's very
researched?
small
Probably
percent.
not. But yeah, maybe. But I mean, I think that's just kind of getting swept up in like maybe it's a medium sized or maybe it's a small sized amount of people online just being insane. But
I
I
mean,
think
I'll
Yeah.
be fair and say I think the like Marxist people we're talking about are probably like maybe a 6 to 12% of the population. It's a small fringe thing, but they're just very loud. They're very active, and they
yeah,
have pretty much infiltrated academia back in the 70s. I think, Garrett, you did a thing on critical race theory a while ago,
Yep.
where you talked about Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw and like the origins of a lot of these type of things. And they've kind of done the long march through the institutions to get up to this point. And it's appealing to a lot of young people, but it's essentially replacing economic class for identity group.
So I just posted
Where
a
are you getting
source
6 or 12%
for you
from?
that basically says 1% or fewer people globally are Marxist primarily. So
Cool.
you may want to look at that source and come back to me later.
Yeah, where are you getting 6 or 12% from?
He
6
said
or
it. So he
12%?
said in the U.S. Garrett said 1% globally.
Yeah, but I think
I think that was
it's low. It's about
I would
10%
question
that
your sources if you say
Marxist
1%. I
draw
think the
from Marxist
CCP,
philosophy is about 10% in the US, but not primarily Marxist.
so 1% in the whole world.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
What about the US? What's it say for the US? People who identify as Marxists. Be interesting.
Let me look. I'll get a
But what
source
is
for
the
you.
definition of Marxism?
Yeah, I
I've
want to
read
get into
Marx.
that. Garrett,
Yeah,
I opened up your link. I opened up your
yeah.
Yeah.
link. And it
Yeah.
says,
I read
and I think
Marx.
the 1%, I want to talk about the specifics. I think the 1% has to be nonsense. For example, if you scroll down, you see one of the questions was about private property. Okay. And what percentage of people believe that allowing people to own property facilitates economic injustice? 27%. People who believe or against private property or who believe private property ownership creates injustice and then say that 27% is not Marxist is an extreme stretch in my opinion.
And we have to define what Marxism is and what is his platform,
So,
because I was reading Marx
so
work in
about
a
two
in
point
a
Yeah.
original.
Yeah,
about
And
but
2 point
I understood there is a lot of propaganda in this country, especially emotional propaganda, and people really don't understand his platform. There,
According to your source, Garrett, 23% believe that individual property ownership is bad for society. How is that not pure Marxism?
and
that
private
is that
property
carefully
is
reasoned out?
different from personal property. Personal property is exactly the same as in the United States. You have your right to have a car, apartment, your own toothbrush, and personal property does not
where are you
belong to
seeing
the
that, Paul? I don't see that in
state.
the source.
I followed your link 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 paragraphs down. I quote specifically the study found that about a quarter of US adults hold negative views of private property. 27% believe allowing people to own property facilitates injustice, economic injustice, and 23% believe that individual property ownership is bad for society. You cannot cite these things and claim that only 1% of the US population is
That's
Marxist.
only
yes, you
first of
can.
yeah,
That's
first of
not the
all,
same thing.
yeah, first
You
of all,
have to
that's
read
only part
nuances.
No,
of
there are the
that's only
Democratic
one small
Socialists,
part of
etc.
Marxism, right? Property part ownership. I have
Yeah,
a
but
hard time
ownership of
understanding
personal
I have a hard
property.
time understanding how that's even possible. I would question that part of the study because, I don't know anyone that thinks that. Like not
Okay, but you're
anyone that I've
citing a
met
Right.
my
study.
entire life, and I've
There
met
is a
people in
difference between
all strata of
personal
society.
property.
So,
Well,
This
Yeah,
this this
private
Garrett,
property
Garrett,
is
I'm
not
glad, Garrett,
personal property.
Garrett,
Private property belongs to the individual.
yeah, Yana,
yeah.
Yana,
Excuse me, personal property
I'm
to
not.
the
No one's no,
individual.
Yana,
no one's
let
talking
Sean speak.
about like Lenin or like the old school Marxists where Stalin's going to come out and appropriate all the property or anything like that.
Yeah,
Uh, well,
we're still back at the Nazis and fascist discussions where we're
yeah,
applying labels to people. I'm seeing MAGA postings on Facebook
Right,
where Democrat equals Marxist equals socialist equals communist, and this is a
right,
load.
right.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
curious if
Yeah.
you
basically,
guys
that's
agree with that. Do you guys agree that Democrats are Marxists?
If this
No,
poll
not
is
not
correct, if
not
this
the
poll
No.
is
majority of
correct,
them.
if this poll is correct, approximately half of Democrats agree that private property either leads to injustice or is bad for
The
Well,
society.
poll didn't
you
say
have
whether those people were Democrats or Republicans, Paul. I'm going to say they're all
How many of the
Republicans.
27% do you
I'm
believe are
teasing. That
Republicans?
was a joke.
you
That was a joke. Come on.
All
Come
you have
right,
to
on.
all
you
right.
have to think about,
I
okay,
know I
what
have to
form.
call out the jokes these days. Please, like, let's lighten up a little bit.
Okay, all right.
No,
So,
to answer your question, Garrett, no, I think there's a lot of Democrats that are old school liberals like myself. I consider myself to be very much like a Bill Maher type liberal. My issue is the growing movement of people who are much more around identity politics, non-liberal things that want to divide things up by race, by gender, by class, and to act like there's never been any progress made in the U.S. around liberal values.
Mhm.
I think it's just to
And,
kind of riff
and if
off
you
that. I
don't
think
know what
it's
I'm pointing to, if you don't know what I'm pointing to, if you've never seen or heard of any type of woke thing that sounds like what I'm describing,
Oh, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Like I understand what you were saying about DEI, and there are poor DEI trainings. Absolutely. Are there racist people training people on DEI? There absolutely were. But
yes,
that doesn't mean
and
that's
it.
what, just let me finish. That doesn't
Mhm.
mean that's what DEI is about. That's not really the purpose of DEI. The main purpose of DEI is to prevent lawsuits against people getting discriminated against. It's to allow everybody to have an equal chance at a job and to create a meritocracy. That's
Well,
what
I'm
DEI is
how
not
do
really
you know that
primarily
the
not a
about.
meritocracy.
definition?
I have to push back against the last bit about saying to create a meritocracy because it specifically is about creating representation among different demographic groups to meet whatever the local population is. That does
We're going to
not
digress
necessarily
on
mean it's
what
going to. What's
we're
that?
Excuse
going to
me,
digress on what DEI is, and that's not
excuse
really
me,
the goal. So I want to go back to some Trump
excuse me,
supporter questions if we
I'm
could.
just
excuse
I'm
Yeah,
just
me,
let's do
refuting
that.
what you
Yeah.
just said. You said it's about meritocracy. I don't know how you can say that.
I think you
excuse
should go
me.
back and watch the video that we did on DEI, and then you'll see how I said that.
Let me
So then
here.
let's talk
Right.
about it
Two
in,
hours
Garrett,
later.
well, you don't have to
There's
stay
a
for the whole
woman
two
who's
hours. Stay
been
for the
saying excuse
presentation.
me several times. Could you guys give respect to somebody?
But wouldn't it be
yeah,
better if
fine.
you
I
shouldn't you
wanted to.
mute shouldn't you mute everyone but the panel for this discussion because it's just
I don't
becoming
have an easy way
chaotic.
to mute everyone. I did ask everybody to mute, but we actually
You
do
said
allow
that.
people to jump in. So Jennifer is welcome
Yeah,
to
go
jump
ahead.
in.
What you
Yes,
got, Jennifer?
yes. Well, I believe that DEI is actually something. I believe that Biden, when he said that he wanted to appoint a black woman to the Supreme Court, he felt that 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 group needed to be represented in some way. And that in no way means that he was hiring somebody who wasn't qualified. And the purpose of DEI is not to hire people who are not qualified. The purpose is to find among all the people who are the most qualified someone who could
Right.
represent, another group or another point of view. And
That's
and I don't see anything wrong with that because we've been getting the white male point of view for generations.
So
Um,
Jennifer, you don't mind them excluding a whole host of candidates based on race or gender?
why do you think anyone is excluded based on race or gender?
Because Joe Biden said that the next Supreme Court is going to be a black woman.
he said he wanted to hire a
And
black woman, and
and Trump said
and if he
his one
didn't
time was
find,
going to be a
Trump
woman, and then
Trump fired
hired
everybody
Amy
that was
Coney Barrett.
that's right,
Yeah,
that's
Trump
right.
fired everybody that was not a white male from the top of the military. Guys, let's not play he said, she said. What I really want to do is now open it up for questions from the folks in with their hands up who have been very patient. So we're going to move on to the next portion of the evening. So now I'm still going to interject with questions if that's okay, but I do want to let like folks with their hands up ask questions. So thank you all for respecting the order and still being able to jump in. I really like when people jump in, so that's a good thing. Matt, you had your hand up first, as far as I can tell.
Matt, you're muted.
By the way, if anyone knows someone trying to get in here, I just upgraded to Zoom because we maxed out of people and I didn't notice it
Did,
earlier.
did you want me to
So we
unmute?
can now fit more than 99, but I may have just wasted the money, but
Uh,
feel
Did
free to tell other people they can join.
did you want me to unmute? Someone
No,
said my
go
name.
ahead, Matt. We would love to hear your question for the Trump panel.
Yeah, so I guess my question is like do do you see that do you think that he is fulfilling all of his campaign promises and do you think that he's going too far now that he has power and do you think there's a limit to how far he will
Just one
go?
question, Matt.
One
Let's stick to
question.
one.
Yeah.
Which
All
one
right,
do you
I'll
want
read the
most?
first one. I guess do you think that he will limit himself as he gains more power?
He's limited himself already in numerous cases. He wanted to fire the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. He talked to some Republicans and then backed way off. He wanted to, some other specific examples. he seems to have every intent of following court rulings. He has not overtly done something in violation of a court order. And before somebody says, yes, there was somebody on a plane who was going to Venezuela, not Venezuela, to a foreign prison. Yes, that was one case where they didn't call the plane back. But if that's the only case you have, he's back in the United States. Okay. And the Trump administration would argue it didn't actually violate the court order because the plane had already taken off. But if that's the only case you have, it doesn't show to me that Donald Trump is violating the power of the court, checks and balances, and he is backing off when he tries to grab too much power. So that's my
Let's dig into that, Paul.
answer.
So you do agree that the court literally said this plane must fly back even though it's in flight. They did say that. Trump did not ask it to be flown back, but you still don't feel like he actually violated the court order. Am I
I'm
understanding that
not saying
correctly?
he didn't violate a court order. As a matter of fact, the only president who's been held in contempt is Barack Obama. No court has held Donald Trump in contempt yet, and that is the court's power to enforce their orders. I think if that's the only example you have, that's an extremely weak example, and that man was eventually returned to the United States.
The
All
plane had a
that
lot
being
of people
said,
on
did
it.
he violate the court order? Yes, it can be argued from one side, and of course, the Trump administration argued from a different side. But again, it doesn't matter to me because I've seen ample evidence that Donald Trump is following checks and balances and backing off when people say what he's doing is unconstitutional.
Well, I just Googled it, and there are at least 5 or 6 cases where he disregarded court orders. You can try
Okay,
it.
once again, the
Can you
court's
put
while
those
power.
sources in the chat, Lawrence, so that Paul can take a look at them? Because Paul's
Yeah,
good at
okay,
tracking
sure.
sources.
Again, the court has an enforcement action. It's called contempt of court. If a court believes the Trump administration is violating an order, they will hold the Trump administration in contempt of court, as was done in the Obama administration one time. It's very rare, but it does happen. Donald Trump is being accused of being a fascist, and the fact that not one single liberal left-leaning judge has yet held the administration in contempt says a massive amount about this subject, far more than 5 cases where there might be two sides arguing
Try to
in
finish your
court
thought.
and hoping for a appeal to overturn the decision.
Paul, can you give a source for Barack Obama being held in contempt? Because when I fact checked that, it doesn't seem to be true. It was Attorney General Eric Holder that was in contempt
I
over
said
the Fast and
the
Furious
Barack
investigation.
Obama administration. I didn't say Barack Obama.
You did.
No, you said
You said
president.
Barack Obama. We have it on record now, so you can go back to the recording.
Yeah, you're absolutely
Okay,
good.
well, I'm clarifying. It was the only administration that's been held in contempt is the Barack Obama administration.
Okay.
What was the original question?
Thank you.
The original question was asking if Trump is seizing power past, I don't know,
Whether or
fascism.
not he's going to release power, because we
Will he
did
give
already cover whether he'll
Okay.
relinquish power, and there's already talk about Donald Trump running as vice president, according to Steve Bannon, and then having JD Vance step down as president. I'm curious if you guys think that that's an okay thing to do.
And Trump was found
Only the Supreme
contempt
Court will make that
for
decision.
a civil case.
Yeah,
Well, we know
I
what
think
the
right now
Supreme
that's
Court's going to say.
I think right now that's unconstitutional unless they were able to go through the process, which I think it's almost impossible with the way Congress is divided up right now that's going to happen. Even this like weird, like he's going to be vice president and then one's going to resign and do that. I don't think there's any way it's going to happen.
Okay, so Sean,
I do think he likes to troll people and pass out Trump 2028 hats and do stuff like that. But
he is doing that, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think it's any type of like real. I don't think we're going to see any type of like Julius Caesar seize the government and never let go of it. No.
By the way, Julius Caesar was a very similar example too. He served 2 terms and then he had consolidated power in the second term, which Trump is actually doing with his executive order. If you guys aren't familiar with his executive order saying he's the sole arbiter of the law, you can go to our event on whether or not Trump is trying to be a dictator. And he actually did say he gets to interpret the law, which is actually the judicial branch of government's job. But anyway, let's get to Yana's question.
Thank you. Before I answer main question, why did we vote for Trump? I have observations that it's mostly males predominant discussion. And one lady repeatedly said in a very polite manner, excuse me, and almost no one, only another lady, asked to give her a chance. And I'm obviously female. I'm not transgender, so I appreciate that I was given a chance. But I'm under impression that my words were totally ignored.
What do you feel
Maybe
was
because
ignored?
I'm female, maybe I'm foreigner. I emphasized couple times that there is a difference between private and personal property, and that Marx is not a fascist. His main idea was that proletariat, working class, should rule the world and not the groomed lawyers. But I think, and I repeatedly say that in my other political meeting, but in my political meeting, people kind of begin to show interest in learning about Marx theories. But seems like, again, I want to understand, maybe some people are bothered my foreign accent or because I'm a female. But I want to answer one the very original questions that you definitely derailed from. Why we choose Trump? I already tried to answer this question, but again, my opinion seems was ignored because we had an option, and that option was super limited. And most of us do not vote for the personality. And that's the difference between right and left. Right mostly is interested in platform, and left is more interested in personality.
Yana, you
And
need to back that up with
in
something.
in this meeting, I see that it's not only personality attacked, but there is convincing going on that you're wrong and I'm right. And it was originally said that we should not convince each other to change our points of view. I
There's,
don't want to take much time,
yeah,
but
there's no
I will
intent.
raise hand again
Yeah,
later on.
Yana, the point is not to convince, it's to understand why someone can hold what seem to be two contradictory beliefs. And it's to understand that we should all be treating each other respectfully, which means that you shouldn't define someone else's beliefs for them. And when I asked the Trump supporters whether or not they would like it if someone defined their beliefs for them, they all agreed no. But then when they were defining what it meant to be woke, they were using a definition that no woke person would really agree with. And so I was basically saying, look, how can you hold these two beliefs at the same time? And so
Because
that's why that was going on. It wasn't about trying to convince them. It was just trying to say, look, we should all let people define themselves and then criticize the definition that they choose to define for themselves, unless we see their actions doing something else. And then if someone doesn't define themselves the way they act, then we can criticize the way they act. But I didn't see that coming through. So
because right and moderates are more interested in a platform, and left only attacks the personality, because I
Donna,
heard all
it
these
doesn't matter how
definitions.
many times you say that. You need to have evidence of that. And when I just heard what it is that people like about Trump, it was really his personality, that he's strong, he's a nationalist leader, that he says what he means. They didn't say that I like what he said. They said I
yeah,
like
that's
that
true.
he says what he means. It's completely a cult of personality with Trump.
That
Your
is true
point
that
is
they
very
did, but
well
most,
taken. Yes,
to be
I
fair,
take
most
it.
people, and I'm going to let you go in 1 second, Jan. I will say a lot of people that I've asked this question to, they do say platform reasons. So I see where you're coming from, Yana, but I will say that tonight was actually an exception. People were really more pointing to his personality than his platform.
We can talk about personality all day long, but it does not change his platform. And again, if we will continue to attack the personality or define the personality, we will deviate from our main goal as citizens. And the main goal to see objectivity of life
Right.
and political situation. We can
Yeah.
laugh at the personality or we can like the personality, but that's totally different issue. And the main question was, why did we vote for him? And again, I'm libertarian. I'm in the middle. So I just choose different platforms, and that's why I voted for him, because I consider him being a libertarian.
Sorry,
Yana,
guys, I wasn't joining you in
Yana,
the
Can I
opinion.
can I respond to that a little bit,
Paul
Yana?
wanted to say
Yes,
something before
please,
you, if you don't
please. I
mind.
want to hear responses because
Can
I feel ignored, to
Yeah,
be
let Paul.
completely honest with you.
I'd like to get back to the question answer format because there's precious little coming out about why some of us support Donald Trump.
Yeah,
There's like one or two things, and we're already an hour in that have been stated so far.
yeah. So can we have questions really focus on listening to understand and sort of what people like about him, if we can? And if it doesn't go well, instead of a free-for-all at the end, I'll go back to asking questions.
All right, can I state, I never
Yeah.
answered that original question you came up with. One of the main reasons I switched from the Democrats in 1922 to the Republicans is the Democrats have become what I consider outright evil when it comes to transgender and transitioning. In my case specifically, I had a 12-year-old daughter in 2022. Kamala Harris was asked, and she said her administration, don't remember if it was either the Biden administration or her administration, would support the transitioning of children, and that was it. I cannot support the left when that is their official position. Now, there are many liberal countries now that have since banned that procedure, doing physical and chemical transitioning on children, but there are still many states in the United States that conduct this horrid, absolutely horrid, evil practice. And I cannot support any candidate on the left.
Cool, we get
that
it.
would
You're a
encourage
transphobe.
this
Got it. Got it.
back this
We
or
get it.
back
You're a
this up.
transphobe.
Please
One of
don't
the
talk
Get
over
things.
it.
Paul.
You're a
Don't talk.
transphobe.
Please don't talk
We
over him.
get it. You're a transphobe. Got it.
Where is that?
Garrett, do you want to
Can I
co-host
jump
me?
in here?
That's an
really quick?
Will, you
example
should.
right
Oh,
there. Like,
where are you, Will?
Hey, look,
Jared.
it's a woke person.
Yeah.
I'm part of the LG. I guess you could say I'm part of the
What?
LGBT community. I'm gay, and there's nothing he said that was transphobic. He's talking about his daughter. He's talking about someone who's not even. That's not even.
So, guys,
Let me wrap it up real quick. I'm going to wrap the whole thing up, okay? California passed a law saying that California passed a law saying that schools can protect a 12-year-old, 12 years old, protect them transitioning, and Donald Trump vowed to eliminate all of this crap from our government, and that's a reason why I would always support Donald Trump over somebody like Kamala Harris, who said specifically she would support transitioning of children. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I really encourage you to watch our event on transgender, because actually it's a very, very, very small percentage of people that get through the guards of who is allowed to transition. It's only people that are in like major critical situations where there is no parent to like watch them, and they're seen as health threats, and there's all kinds of gateways that you have to pass through in order to have that happen. It's a very minuscule, like less than a couple hundred people, if I remember right off the top of my head, in the country that happens to. So I'm curious, is something that affects, transgender people are 1% of the population. Is that so important that losing healthcare for 22 million people, 23 million people is worth the effort, like worth the vote?
It's much more about the values that the left represents now than it is the small number of children who have been mutilated by these policies.
These children are opting in, by the way. They are
It
choosing
doesn't.
this.
These are children who cannot even legally consent to sex.
That's
And at
actually
age 12, without any experience on what sex even is, we're going to allow them to pick what gender they will sexually express as for their entire lives.
no, they
That
they
is one
don't
of the most.
necessarily sexually
Sorry?
express as that for their entire lives. There is permanent repercussions to the gender affirming
That's right.
care, but also we have 27,000 people that commit suicide every year because they don't get gender affirming care.
The
So
latest
essentially by
research says that's completely wrong, and I can cite studies, and I will.
please cite the
I can
studies.
cite studies, and I will, saying that
Yep.
transitioning physically, especially in children, does not improve long-term outcomes. All these studies that show short-term outcomes that are positive are self-reporting, and the suicide rates do not reflect the self-reporting reality.
Again, I don't want to focus on just transgender, but I would encourage you to watch our event on
That's a
transgender.
very important
And you're still
reason.
going to vote
That's a
one way
very
for
important
thousands of
reason why I
people
support Donald
versus
Trump.
millions of people.
Yeah,
Um,
Garrett, when you
You
asked
should
him
probably
what
stop
one of his
talking to
major issues
transphobes
was.
if you don't want to be obsessed with trans. If you don't want to focus on trans people, I suggest we move on from the transphobes. The problem.
Jay, who are you?
Jay,
You just
I'm someone
got
who
him.
calls out bigots when I hear bigotry. That's who I am.
Jay, calm
Thanks.
down. Jay, calm down.
No, I'm not
And
going to calm
So,
down.
Jay, if
Why
you
don't you
don't,
not
Garrett,
be calm?
for context,
Why don't
Jay,
you
if
be
you don't
angry?
remain polite, you will be removed from the session.
Can I ask
Garrett, for
quick?
context, that is what Sean thinks of a woke person. That's like
Woke
the
person.
Twitter woke person, by the way.
Woke person.
Guys, you
Hey,
have to
panelists.
understand.
Hey, panelists, could I
Yeah, go ahead.
understand more about what your fear is underneath that? Like, let's all put our stuff aside. Let's say that happened, somebody transitioned. What
Mhm.
is the fear that you have of that outcome? Like,
I
did
think
it, yeah, if you could expand.
transitioning, I'll answer the question. I think transitioning in children is a social contagion, and I believe that can be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt by the fact that the number of children who identified with gender dysphoria in males stayed fairly flat. It did climb, but the number of females reporting gender dysphoria skyrocketed and went 5 times the rate of males and is now coming down just as hard, which
Sure, but
absolutely, now wait, let me finish, which absolutely to me demonstrates that this is much more than something you're born with or something you have no control over, and that encouragement may be a core part of this identity. Finally, the outcomes for trans children are extremely negative. Substance abuse, dangerous sex, and 70%, I think, is the latest figure. 70% of children who identify as trans have another serious mental health issue in addition to gender dysphoria. So those things all show me that there's much more going on, and that encouraging somebody in their transitioning is just as harmful as encouraging an anorexic in his or her body dysmorphia. It's the same thing.
Well,
Lisa,
It's
you
hard
didn't
to
actually
take
answer her
Paul
question.
seriously when he has not provided anything
Well,
that he said.
well,
And
you didn't actually answer.
sterilization
Hold
of
on, hold on,
children.
hold on,
Can I?
guys. Hold on.
You
Paul
mind
didn't
if I
actually
add
answer the
on?
question. I'd like to understand because out of the children that transition, it's less than 1% that even regret it. So I'm curious, what is the negative outcome? This was her question. What is the negative outcome that you're
Garrett,
Sterilization of
so,
children
so
is
Garrett,
negative
please
outcome.
hold on, Yana. Let me finish. What is the negative outcome that you're worried about other than that 1% that regret it?
The
Garrett,
CAS, the
I
CAS
posted.
review, the
Okay.
CAS review from 2024 says that 1% figure is absolute garbage and should
Yep.
not be trusted. The 1% comes from near-term self-reporting psychological surveys. Most of the people recruited to fill out those surveys are done by trans organizations. The CAS report and other studies I can cite show extremely negative consequences for any child that transitions, and children who physically transition, even worse outcomes.
On top of that, if I
So
may,
can I?
well, I posted, Garrett, I posted some links to the studies on this. Studies do show that young people who originally identify as being trans, if not socially transitioning or undergoing puberty blockers, 60 to 90%, if left alone to go through puberty, actually end up desisting. So the issue here, to your point, Lisa, what's one of the dangers? One of the dangers is what do you call it? Oh, brain fart. Basically, a false positives. False positives where you're identifying people as being transgender who are not, who, if they went through puberty, many of them find out their autism is a lot in the population there. There are young gay people who, if left alone, will just find out that they're attracted to the same sex and they're undergoing, the discomfort of puberty. And so what you're doing, one of the dangers is you're transitioning healthy young gay people into the other sex through social pressures. So I think that's a pretty big thing.
But would you agree that if the percentage of people that regret it is is close to 1%. I realize Paul is contesting that with the Cass study. We did review the Cass study in our trans issue. I have to look up exactly what the concerns were with it. I think what it was saying needs to be proven out over time. Like it hasn't had a long enough time, if I'm remembering right. But if
Many European countries are going away from this, Garrett. Very liberal European countries are backing away from this, and these young people will not be able to achieve orgasm. How can they know what they can't, what they're not going to like? How can you say like they aren't going to regret it? The 1% regret it.
Hi, I'm
I
a
mean,
trans
this
person.
is
Can I interject?
go ahead.
Sure.
Thank you. My name's Duncan. I'm a trans person. I'm 66 years old. I've known since I was 6 years old that I was trans. I didn't transition until I was 40.
Okay.
But I know the Cass review has been debunked. It was highly political. The only people who were on it were people who were associated with people like DeSantis in Florida. And just a lot of what I'm hearing right now is the talking points are all propaganda that is definitely disputable. So somebody needs to recognize that this is not it's not a neutral or unbiased or even you're not backing up with any actual evidence that hasn't been disputed.
So
Duncan,
thank
the
you,
Cass
Duncan,
review was
first of
from
all, for
England,
speaking
not
up.
Florida. The Cass review was from England, not from Florida.
Can I interject
He was
possibly?
talking about that the people had a relationship with DeSantis, not that it was from Florida. He's clearly familiar with the actual Cass study, and that was. Thank you for reminding me, Duncan. I remembered there was something about it, but it was that it was done in a conservative administration with only conservative appointees. There was no, and this is one of the problems with what Trump is doing is firing meritocratic government employees and replacing them with politically ideological conservatives is that you don't get that diversity that will point out wrongdoing in the government. But let's go to questions because we have a lot of people that have been patient with their hands up.
But I want to
James,
answer your question. Can I do it real quickly?
Yana,
Sterilization of children is one of the worst crimes
please
in
let's
medicine.
let James, who's been waiting for probably 25 minutes to raise his hand, speak for a little bit if we could.
Okay, I'll try to leave the transitioning question to others. I've been, although I've always, in my life, I've always supported trans people as I found them, learned about them and supported them as I found them, either in movies or in real life. I'm really strong on, I've been thinking about this kind of thing about supporting Trump. And because I deeply in the last day or two, to talk about coincidences. And what I have discovered is that Trump is attractive among his followers because his dominant eye is always on efficiency and closing deals. In other words, this Trump of the art of the deal is actually a true character. That is who he more or less tries to play. He's the one who takes charge and wants to change things. That makes him a progressive. It makes him a difficult target for the current porcupine Democratic Party. It's just based on opposing the elected president. So, and it's the main effect of his presidency. He's not going to modify the Constitution of the United States of America, since that's impossible. And the people that voted for him sent him here to protect it. I don't think that the Trumpist movement is exactly in line with the Republican Party. And the Republican Party is historically based on kind of a simple conservative ideology, which is not entirely in line with liberal ideologies. But a lot of liberal people like myself admire Donald Trump for his ability to get things done and follow principles in governmental principles in choosing what to do and what what to do in in both domestically and internationally in protecting American interests. So that's. I don't know where the meeting. I missed the first half hour of the meeting because I lost my sound, but it it the I think people don't realize the importance of Trump's ideology to the to his election. The fact that he is oriented towards problems and fixing inequities and getting things done, I think makes him a bit of a more of a liberal that wants to correct problems and make progress for the
Thanks.
American cause,
Thanks.
not
I
to
think that was
destroy the
more of a
other parts
comment.
of government. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing your perspective. I think that was more of a comment than a question. So I'm going to go to.
No, I'm sorry it wasn't a question, but
No, it
I
doesn't
did
have to
sort of
be.
prepare myself for it. Yeah.
No, that's okay. It doesn't have to be. You can make a comment supporting Trump. That's what we're here for, is to listen to why people like him. So I appreciate you sharing your perspective. So Paul, go ahead.
Sure. I was hoping that this discussion would make me feel better, but it doesn't. It makes me feel a lot worse. Am I to understand, based on what I've heard, that we're going to support for president a man who tried to stage a coup to remain in power, who overthrows every single norm of civilized society? He doesn't tell the truth. He doesn't talk about what's really on his mind. He talks about what he thinks will help him. Are we going to support a man who doesn't care about the middle class, who is trying to hand all the wealth to a few billionaires because he will stand up against things like transgender rights? If maybe that's not the right term, but my God, really? Is that what we're going to do? And so I do have a question. I have a question for his supporters. Oh, by the way, he's not funny. Barack Obama was funny. If you watch the dinners in New York, he couldn't tell a joke. Are you kidding me? He bombed. He completely bombed. Why? Because he's cruel. People who are cruel are not funny. So here's my question. Why did I not hear from any of his supporters tonight any response to the fact that he is an existential threat to our country and our civilized way of life? Why was that not part of your reason?
Because he's not. Because what he's doing is he's rolling
they don't
back.
think that.
He's rolling. Yeah, we don't think that. He's rolling us back, I don't know, 10 years in most cases. As I said previously, he has shown a tendency to back off when he does things that are clearly not constitutional.
Paul, when he tried to overthrow the government, he didn't back off. Does that not bother you that he tried to do that?
He didn't ask his supporters. He didn't ask his supporters to run to attack the Capitol. He asked his supporters to support the congressmen and women who were counting the votes. That's what he said.
That's right. And
the other is a lie by the BBC. They spliced tapes together in order to make his comments false, in order to make it look like he said something he didn't actually say.
Dictators and fascists use the military. Donald Trump, back on January 6th, was commander-in-chief. Donald Trump did not instruct the military to leave him in as president. Donald Trump stepped down after all of his other avenues were exhausted. He also didn't order that crowd to go break into Congress. Okay. I understand your fears. I'm sorry.
He didn't ask them to stop. He was asked by the people around him, by his closest advisors. He was told specifically, please tell them to go home and to stop doing what they're doing. He refused to do it, and he never did.
He did it late. I agree.
Very late. Very late. By the time that the people who had a list of Democratic people to kill that opposed Donald Trump were within 30 seconds of being able to kill them. That's when he.
So Garrett, you're trying to understand or trying to debate the other side? It seems you're not trying.
I am trying to debate. You're right, and I shouldn't. I apologize.
I
do want to point out.
Seriously derailing all of the discussion.
I do want to point out factual inaccuracies, and when Paul says he was not a part of that,
you're asking people why they
not
support
say
Donald
he was
Trump.
not a part of that.
So their opinion, therefore, suffices. They don't have to prove it to you that everything they say is correct.
Well,
because
But
you're
I
trying to
I
understand.
think
I am actually
And the
here
two,
to we all agreed at the beginning of this event that we agree to seek truth. And what Paul was doing is sharing a partial truth that actually hides the actual truth. And I don't think he meant to do that. I don't think that was his intent because Paul said he agrees that we should seek truth. What I was doing is helping us seek truth together by getting us closer to the objective reality of what happened that day. And what happened that day is Donald Trump's closest advisors asked him to tell that crowd to stand down. He refused to do it until it was too late.
But I
Garrett,
said nothing
Garrett,
about
when we
that.
start,
feel like
Garrett, when we started this conversation, you asked me
the media
about
But
plays a
woke,
narrative.
and
can
the
I
very
can I
first thing you
finish can I
did was
finish my point, Garrett? You jump
go
in. I
ahead.
would like to finish my point.
Go ahead.
I think almost all people who voted for Donald Trump agree that January 6th should never have happened and that mob
Yes,
should never have broken
agreed.
into Congress. And
100%
we all
agree.
agree. But let's understand the context. The context of Donald Trump and January 6th is 2020 and 2021 is an entire year of left-wing riots in Portland where 500 plus police officers suffered injuries. It's cities burning. It's you know, what's his name? Kyle shooting people because they were trying to kill him. It's chaos. It's a previous demonstration at the United States Capitol that was people rioting in front. They didn't break in, but all this violence and chaos and attacks from the left. And then January 6th comes and people are all, well, I could withhold my vote from Donald Trump because of January 6th. But look at all of this violence and insanity we just lived through with the BLM riots. And they said, it doesn't matter that much to us. Obviously, things have moved on. There are more important issues at stake.
Yeah,
Is
that's what I
there a
was trying to
difference
get to that.
between
Is
between race riots that affect individual locations and an attempt to kill all of our elected representatives that disagree with a particular political figure? And I think you said you're against the January
You're
6th riots. So
grossly mischaracterizing
Garrett,
January 6th.
what
I thought you guys were going to let
they
other
tried to
people
kill everybody? Is
participate.
that what you
that
said,
was the
Garrett?
goal. They were actually trying to kill
Absolutely was not the goal.
How many
that
weapons did they find? How many guns? How many bombs?
there were actually there were people with guns that were turned away. So the people with guns, and actually there is a recording of Donald Trump saying, let them in, let them in, they're my people. So people with guns did try to get in that day. They were turned away, even though Donald Trump said that they should be let in. So there were people with guns, they were turned away. The other thing that's, I think, important is that, shoot, no, I lost my train of thought. But go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, so first off, I disavow January 6th. I don't think it should have happened. I think, honestly, all the protesters going in there shouldn't have happened. They were lying in the chalk outline that the left had made for them to be insurrectionists and trying to take over. Dumbest mistake that could have possibly happened. That being said, I did not see any arson. I did not see people shooting. I didn't see bombs being planted or anything like that. And maybe to your point, Garrett, maybe there was something like that.
There were barriers. That's why there were no bombs that were allowed through. There were no guns that were allowed through.
But did you miss the gallows?
For January 6th, it was staged. And they knew that there were going to be people at the and if you watch the live videos, the officers at the White House were actually allowing people into the building. It was staged, and they knew it was going to happen, and they let it happen, and they made sure that they put the media, all this stuff is about the media and who owns the media, and they create the narrative because nobody was capturing what was really happening during the BLM riots, and you guys brought up Marxism. BLM was started by Marxists. What happened to 8 billion, 80 billion? I don't know how many billions of dollars has been given to that organization, and what has it done? They've decimated Orlando, Seattle, Washington, Chicago. All of these are democratic cities. George Floyd was the whole George Floyd thing. That was a democratic city as well.
So
but I'm
Jojo,
just
can you cite your source for the January 6th riots being staged? I'd like to see that source in the chat. Sean, the thing that shoot, I remembered it and then I lost it.
Jojo, you asked a great question, and I'd be interested in the answer. Who does own the media?
If you watch the live, this was the thing, is before I ever even became a Trump supporter, I was a Democratic because I was raised and taught, you're black, you're half Mexican, you're a Democrat. And I took a step back because I like Trump, all up until he became a president. And I didn't realize how much the media was actually affecting my perspective of him. And I don't even watch television. I don't even watch the news. But I was being propped like everywhere you go. Trump's a narcissist. He's a that. He's a that. And it's crazy how he, from one day being popular in the Black community and in rap, Trump's all over rap music. The minute he became a Republican president, now he's a racist. Now he's a sexist. All of a sudden, and I had to take a step back and say, like, he's done a lot. I mean, even people that have worked for him, they talk really bad about him. And it's, again, the media. How many people actually interview the people that actually work for him at the Trump Towers?
But Jojo, you asked a great question. Why don't you answer it? Who owns the media?
Who owns the media?
Yeah.
The media, if you look at it, most of the people that own the media, they're all Democratic run. If you follow if you follow it all the way to the top, they're all those
Fox
people.
News, OAN.
They're corporations, my man.
The largest media with a political slant is conservatively owned, actually.
Yeah,
conservative media is much
motivated, my friend.
And Fox News is number one.
That's who owns the media, the corporation.
Because there's only one on that side that Fox News is number one. Okay, combined, you got combined left-wing cable news and broadcast news by far outweigh the conservative side.
Even they are
ABC is owned by a religious conservative group. NBC is now owned by Ellison, who is one of Trump's best friends and gave him millions of dollars of money.
Hey guys, I think
NBC.
we're way off topic, and
I agree we're way off topic. I have a question, Sean. If you disavow January 6th, I'm curious, like, are you concerned about the fact that everyone got pardoned?
Everybody, yes.
Everyone in January 6th got pardoned.
Let me.
I'm sorry. I thought you were asking. Sorry.
There are certainly people. I'd have to look at the rap sheets for a lot of them. I know there are some people who did things that I think were egregious and probably should have stayed in jail for longer. I know there were people who, as Jojo said, were let through the velvet ropes, opened up, and had no idea that what they were doing was basically signing up for, a jail sentence. And depending on where you were at the Capitol building at the time, if you were in the back, they were letting people in. If you were in the front, it looked like a riot. So I don't think all of them are the same, but I think some of the people probably deserve to be pardoned. I think some of them probably didn't.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
911 calls during all the BLM riots. You hear everyday citizens begging for the police to come and help out, and they're being decimated by the BLM. And Kamala Harris is actually funding people that are part of the riots. They were calling them peaceful, but none of that was peaceful. And they tore the cities down. A lot of business owners, if you didn't have a BLM sign on the front of your
Jojo, just 20 seconds if you can. So I'd like to go to David, who's had his hand up for a long time patiently. So David, go ahead. Questions? Let's try to stay focused on topic. Questions about why these guys support Trump. And anyone that's a Trump supporter is now allowed to answer.
Me. I'm a Trump supporter.
You're a Trump supporter?
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome to answer questions now too. We're gonna go a little
sure.
wild
So many
west,
people that want to talk, and I've been like in line having my hands raised. So anyway, I supported Trump. I do support him because I feel he's like he's different from well, actually I wanted to ask you what makes him different from other Republican presidents. I wanted to know is it in general what makes him a different president, or but what I wanted to know is what do you think makes him a different president from other Republican presidents that have been, presidents for the United States. So I wanted to know that. I'm asking you, Garrett. I wanted to know that. But I have my reason.
Can I answer your question real quick?
Okay, sure.
The reason folks love him is because he's the only president or presidential candidate who said in the last 40 years, for sure, who said, I love poorly educated. With Clintons and Obamas, unless you have a law degree from Harvard or Yale.
Oh, yes. I like that too. Yes, he does value
control.
He does value any level of of education, like because I'm college educated, I have a bachelor's degree. I feel like in this our Republican presidency, just having a college degree has more value than when it's the blue parties that are in control of the government. I just feel that way. But back to what I was
It
trying to
was
say
not a
though,
compliment by Trump to say he loves
college. Yeah, any kind of education, I believe so, is valued by people from the Republicans. So I like that. I personally, I value like even just having a high school diploma is something. I know that with the blue, like when our government goes blue, we tend to see more of like Obama, those like PhD holders, law degree holders. But I like this presidency because if you look at the White House, for example, White House secretary. She just has like a bachelor's degree. I'm not even that. It's just the emphasis is more on like being business savvy, practical versus I'm being realistic, rational, and not too idealistic. But with Obama, there's a lot of idealism. That whole all those things that come with blue party. It's not the same as Republican Party. So
I
I'm
want to say
Trump did
something
not
real
mean
quick
that as a
about
compliment when
if
he said he
so I'm
didn't like.
happy that I'm Republican. I
yeah,
don't know.
can I quickly show how much Trump loves poor people? He loves poor people because they actually gave up so much money in the big beautiful bill. Poor people lost the most amount of money in the big beautiful bill. This is the chart. The poorer you are, the more you paid. The richer you are, the more you made. That's how it was in the big beautiful bill, and it's a big ugly bill in my perspective for that reason. I'm curious for the Trump supporters, do you support this kind of socioeconomic handout from the poor to the wealthy? Like, do you agree
12
with the
grand?
socioeconomic distribution from the poor to the wealthy? It's
I
an
don't agree
economic
with it, but you're
distribution.
ignoring the fact that a lot of people think that if you enrich the top, then the bottoms has more jobs as a trickle down effect.
We actually studied that, and there's been peer-reviewed research that basically says that trickle-down economics doesn't even achieve one of its many goals. And I really recommend Googling, going to YouTube and going to Freethinker Institute, trickle-down economics or supply-side economics. We
Yeah,
we
I
covered
started
the
out by
peer-reviewed
saying I
research on
don't. I
that.
started out by saying I don't agree with it, but I also
Okay.
said a lot of people that the people you are talking about probably think that those tax cuts for the upper class will enable them to have jobs.
Yes, I
So
agree with you.
you
I
can't
agree
just
with you,
dismiss
Paul.
it.
I
Yeah.
agree with you, Paul. I think that that's the perception, and thank you, Paul, for disagreeing with it and pointing it out just the same. So I appreciate that about you. So
Okay,
I'm gonna unpin those of us in the spotlight, so that we can go to everybody. And Paul had his hand up the longest, so I'm gonna go to Paul to ask a question, and any Trump supporter is welcome to jump in and answer. We're gonna go free for all now.
Hi, thanks, Garrett. Many people are very concerned that the country's become much more divided and polarized during the Trump era. And my question is, what can we do to fix that? I'd rather focus on constructive conversation rather than debating things that have happened in the past.
Agreed, Paul.
We should have let Bernie Sanders run against Trump, not the deadbeat. What's his name? Biden. I already forgot his name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's the past,
That
Natasha.
would
Natasha,
have
we want the
taken out
constructive future,
bet,
not what
I bet.
happened in the past.
So,
Paul, I would say events like this are actually really good to develop empathy. I think today's day and age, everybody gets their news and their social politics through social media, through echo chambers, where everybody tells them that your opinion is the best ever, and anyone who disagrees with you is stupid or evil. And so I think face-to-face conversations like this with people we disagree with and challenging ideas is the best thing we can do to find common ground.
And I'm going to put a pitch for our event in 2 weeks where we're going to talk about how can we decide what's true? Because I think a lot of tonight, the Trump supporters and the non-Trump supporters disagreed about the fundamental truth. So we're going to talk about what in philosophy is called epistemology. How do you come to the truth? So I really want to encourage everyone to come back for that one. And we're not going to talk about political topics. We're going to talk about the deep level. How do I decide something is true in the first place? So please join there. Thank you, Paul. I will put my pitch in for the Free Thinker Institute because that is why I hosted tonight's event is to try to unite us more than divide us. And that's why I started with what we agreed on, which are common values. And I think if we walk through those common values, and I hope that, Sean and Paul and company will meet up with me sometime when we have an event in New York City, and I'll buy them a drink or two, and we can actually talk about this more in depth. And I think that having those conversations with people we disagree about and looking to understand is really how we bridge this divide. And I hope that more people will do listening to understand. I admit, like I tried to put difficult questions in front of people tonight. Part of that is because I have these difficult questions myself, and I don't understand how Trump supporters can reconcile them. And so that's why I put them forward, because I don't know the answers. And you guys clearly know the answers. And I was asking you because for me, I don't know the answers. So I don't know how you support him in light of those things. And so I wanted to understand.
But you don't pay attention to our answers.
I,
With all
I do,
due
Yana.
respect,
And
yeah, with all due respect,
yeah,
I think you're trying to convince us instead of trying to understand our points of view. You can
I've been,
present your
I've been
point is
asking
very
questions,
well
Yana.
taken. Yeah, your point is very well taken. We listen carefully, but we don't have to be convinced. We
No, I'm
just
not
express
expecting anyone
our
to be convinced
opinions.
tonight, Yana, but I do expect everybody to follow those 5 and 6 intentions that we talked about, which means that we listen to each other with an open mind. And
Right.
so I don't expect anyone to be convinced, because we should all use our own critical thinking to decide what to agree with and what not to agree with. And I would never tell anyone here to trust me just because I'm me or anything like that. I want you guys to trust yourselves, but I also want to encourage everybody to work on your critical thinking, as I do, and as we do in these Free Thinker Institute events. Every week we have some aspect of critical thinking that's a part of our events. And so come back for our events, because we do work on our critical thinking here. That's part of what the Free Thinker Institute is about. It's one of the main goals. Michael, did you have any?
Garrett,
Yeah,
Most of
Garrett, can
us
I
have
talk about
critical thinking very
can
well
I
developed.
just
can
one
I
second,
Critical
talk
Yana.
about the
thinkers
Free
are
Thinker
here.
Institute?
Do you guys mind if Michael mentions quickly what we have a membership, and I would love to have more Trump supporters as members, to be honest. So, Michael, can you give a quick
Yes,
testimonial?
I've been a member of the Free Thinker Institute since shortly after its inception. I met a lot of people with different perspectives, different backgrounds, different ideas, and I found that it's helped me round my perspectives out, broaden my horizons, be able to express my vulnerabilities, and it's really been a growing experience for me. And the people who I've met in the Free Thinkers Institute are across the entire spectrum, and they're not just members anymore. I consider them my friends, and I think anybody who joins will be enriched by it.
Thank
Yep.
you,
Thank
Michael.
you.
We're kind of a peer mentoring, group, and we learn from each other, we teach each other, we help each other apply those 6 intentions into our daily life. But we want diverse perspectives. So Jeff, good to see you, my friend.
Oh, look at that. Hey, Garrett, I was meaning to ask you,
Nadali, it's Jeff's turn, if you don't mind. You're welcome to raise your hand again, but we have a bunch of hands up,
okay,
so
sorry,
that's
sorry.
okay. Jeff, go ahead.
So, Garrett, I want to thank you for hosting this. It's a tough meeting to host,
It's the
and
hardest one I've done yet, Jeff.
I know.
I have to be
And
honest. It's the hardest one I've done yet.
we just got to keep it
It is my
together for
biggest challenge.
another 10 minutes. But
Yeah.
I really want to thank those of you who are here as, whatever that means, Trump supporter.
Yes.
I just think you've done a really marvelous job of sharing your perspectives and backing them up with what you consider to be, the most credible, compelling information. And I just think you've done a tremendous job of it. And really, I really want to thank you for that. Even Sean, the research you did live and put it into the chat is fantastic. And Paul, I thought your points were really were well articulated. I was somebody who's up to my eyeballs involved in the 2024 election, and I was very familiar with the issues of the day. With immigration at the southern border and lowering inflation and fixing health insurance and the violence in the in the marches in the summer and lowering crime in big cities and all those things. I engaged with many people on far on both sides of the political spectrum, and what I'm curious of, my question is, if there's anything that you think that it would be likely that folks who are, let's say, sort of, center left, would be inclined to agree with you regarding especially issues of policy, just sort of staying away from temperament and personality for a moment, and really just where you imagine there might be places of general agreement.
Enforcing immigration law. I think most Democrats who are working class people, I think they're suffering because of what happened during Joe Biden and essentially letting anybody who wanted to come here show up and downbid jobs so low that the people doing gig economy work are getting practically nothing now. I think they should be able to find common ground with enforcing immigration law and supporting wages through that policy.
Thank you, Paul.
I would agree.
Others?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say also say like U.S. protectionism around like bringing manufacturing back. The tariffs might not be the ultimate solution for a lot of things, but I do think it does incentivize bringing jobs back to America, and I think Trump, in some ways, has kind of co-opted a lot of left-wing things, such as like the working class. I think the labor demographic is definitely being served by Trump. And in general, if you're against, in general, racism, if you were for colorblind equality, I think a lot of the policies he puts forward are the same policies that would have been pushed in the early 2000s and 90s around that I think a lot of us grew up with.
John, I'm curious, you said bringing back a lot of factory jobs. Is this what I assume you meant when you said the tariffs are going to create jobs? I'm curious if you've seen the trend of robots being factory workers.
I am very concerned about artificial intelligence and all of that. That being said, we're not quite there with humanoid robots that are going to do all the jobs yet. I do think we are going to get some manufacturing jobs back, but yes, we are in a weird transitionary period worldwide.
Sean,
actually...
excuse me, Garrett.
Go ahead.
I really I resonate with that aspiration, Sean. I am a little bit up to my eyeballs in the world of artificial intelligence, and I can promise you that in 3 years, 4 years, if a lot of manufacturing jobs for a wide variety of things, from cars to toasters, were brought home to America from ways that they had been moved into other countries, the way that those things are going to be manufactured, not by robots that look like people, where it's just going to be automated. The jobs are going to be very different. The people who are running factories are going to be overseeing many, many more machines, and so because that's the only thing that'll justify the major investment in the plant and equipment necessary to actually start those things, 2, 3, 4 years from now. So it's going to be a different world. And I'd encourage everybody to kind of take a breath every once in a while and just think, when we're talking about these things, and we sort of refer to the past, like in language, like bring back certain things that they'll be the same again. Just think of how fast things are changing in this era right here. And they might look really, really different 3, 4, 5 years from now than the way we've thought of them for the last 5, 10, 15 years. So that's my encouragement.
I will also say,
If I agree with you, and I come from a working class family. Battle Creek, we had manufacturing.
I lived in Battle Creek for a little while when I was a
Yeah,
kid.
and all the cereal factories ended up moving overseas. We lost all of that, but I take it.
Every in fourth grade, every year there was
Yeah.
that visit to the Kellogg factory where we
You
watched the
got it.
cornflakes be made.
I worked that factory in the summer, so during college. But no, I hear your point, and I agree. But I would even be fine with those manufacturing jobs coming back here, even if it's automated here and we support it, versus allowing all that automation to happen over in China or offshore. So, but I take your point.
John, just to let you know, there are over 4.6 million industrial robots currently operating in factories right now. And if you go to our event, our YouTube video on tariffs and on tariffs, it'll explain how actually the tariffs reduced the number of jobs because the downstream effect of the tariffs actually caused natural resources to go up, and that ended up reducing downstream jobs more than the number of factory jobs that were created by 10x or so. So I really encourage you to look at that and the statistics related to it if you want to get to the real economic impact of the tariffs.
I'll take a look at that. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. I do want to, we have had a bunch of comments that I think are accurate that we have a male-dominated night tonight. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to skip to Sarah so that we can get a female voice since we've had a lot of male voices. And then I'm going to go to Nadali, and then I'll go back through the line.
Okay, yeah. So I wanted to add to what
sorry, Nadali, first Sarah,
Oh,
and then
okay.
we'll go to you. Sorry. Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you. So no, this is so great. And as somebody who is, I would say I'm more moderate, and I actually agree with Sean on some things, but I consider myself liberal as well. I live in Florida now, and I lived in California. And what's interesting is I get the extremism, that can make people really angry on the right. My sister is gay, and she was actually against getting the COVID vaccination. And when she did that, she got a lot of hate. She got like death threats. It was kind of wild. But at the same time, she's also, gay, and she is very liberal in certain areas as well. And so I kind of forgot what my question was. I think it was more centered around what Paul was saying. I've talked to people in the FTI about how, with the transgender issue, and I actually agree about having a law. I still can't understand that it was one policy that changed your whole political stance. And that's what I just really, really want to understand, like how that happened.
That was the light switch. That was the light switch for me. And when I decided that I could no longer back the Democratic Party, I gave money to Obama. I voted for him twice. I even voted for Joe Biden the first time because I thought Trump was dangerous. The trans issue was the light switch. The other straw that kind of broke the camel's back was the fact that Republicans are now more liberal than Democrats, and I am a liberal. I am for free speech. I was banned from almost every social media platform for saying nothing more than I don't believe that a man can turn into a woman or a woman can turn into a man. That opinion got my voice crushed in Twitter, on Nextdoor, on a whole bunch of different on different platforms. Republicans are more pro free speech than Democrats. Republicans are less racist than Democrats. I agree with something approximating a meritocracy. I don't believe that skin color or gender says anything about you. Virtually every Democrat I've ever talked to in my life says that race and gender carry with it presumptions that you can use to form policy. And this is despite the argument that I had with Garrett earlier. I think virtually all Democrats and all progressives believe, even if they don't know, believe that race and gender can form the basis of policy. In other words, a bigoted assumption that means they should be advantaged or disadvantaged accordingly. I think most progressives here would say that white people have natural advantages because we have systemic racism. I very much disagree with that, but I think the application of remedies is extremely racist. Therefore, I consider the Democrats more racist and more anti-free speech than the Republicans, and I'm a liberal, so I support the Republicans.
Here,
So,
here.
Paul, I would encourage you to watch our event on recidivism because it talks about the crime rates and actually people of color get sentenced for exactly the same crimes to stiffer punishments and more frequently than white people. So as much as I agree with most of what you said, actually, I do, just to put it out there, I agree with most of what you said. And by the way, I'm not a liberal, I'm an independent, I'm just woke. I'm a woke independent. So
Well, listen,
yeah.
I'm one of the producers on the Red Pill movie, and what we found is that men receive 3 times longer sentences and are convicted twice as much as women for the same crime,
Yep.
whereas the race discrepancy you're talking about is about 12 to 15%. So the sexism against men we have, if you're going to use this as your metric, is far more severe a problem than race.
So I haven't looked into the sexism, but I don't, at least I don't remember the statistics on sexism, but we did cover it, I think, in that video. So, but I remember there being a difference between male versus female. So you're right about that. I don't think it was at least I didn't find it to be as big as you said, but let's go to more hands up. I want to go to some people that haven't spoken yet. So, um, Steve, I think you haven't spoken yet. So if you've yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, very interesting evening. I'm a former election board chairman in county in South Carolina. Did that for 14 years through 2018. One of my major concerns, there are others, but one of my major concerns is how um, Trump and some of those around Trump have just trashed the election system. I am friends with what are often termed election um, deniers. We have the Tina Peters situation out in Colorado right now. I would just ask the Trump supporters, how will we come back to a trust in elections and following due process, meaning election board decisions, both local and state, and also court decisions? There has to be a finality after an election. Trump is still talking about the 2020 election, is subpoenaing records from Fulton County, Georgia, as a participant both on the county level and the state level in professional election administration. Everyone in elections realizes that there's a minuscule amount of fraud. Taxpayers would not pay for what it would cost to eliminate all fraud. And you couldn't pay enough to eliminate all fraud. There's going to be some fraud. There's some fraud in the certainly in the administration of mail-in ballots. All election officials are aware of that. Yet folks down in Mecklenburg County and surrounding counties voted in someone back into Congress in 2024 who had worked with and participated in election um, um, absentee voting in North Carolina in some rural counties in that district, primarily over in Robeson County, North Carolina. So how do we bring back a basic trust in the election system with, it seems like, a bulk of the Trump supporters?
Voter ID.
Yeah, a couple of things. I'd say that. I'd say no more absentee ballot type of thing. I think that for what better or worse,
Right.
it calls into question things. And don't suppress, articles coming out about candidates right before the election. Those things are generally bad. Do you think that the last election was a fair election, or do you think Trump rigged it?
You mean the 2020 or the 2020 or the 2016?
2024. Do you think the institutions held up? Or do you
I
think
think
Trump
the
stole it?
election, I think the election administration system held up.
Think Trump stole the
That is
election?
what seems to be getting challenged in so many cases is the election administration system. And I would say that it is largely fair across the country. I've met with folks from other states, of course, and we're all concerned about that. In a red state, South Carolina, York County, where I'd been board chairman, we had 25% of the folks in 2020. Now, this is after I left, but 25% of our staff left because of threats in a county that Trump overwhelmingly carried.
We did an event on this, by the way, for anyone interested on the 2024 election. I think there was clear foreign meddling in our election. So that I don't think that's actually controversial.
Right.
So
Garrett, you think Trump stole the election then?
You know what? I'm not afraid to say that he could have, but I don't think it was Trump necessarily deciding how foreign governments were going to invest, but some foreign governments were pro-Trump and some were anti-Trump. Like, or not anti-Trump, but they were like China was like anti representatives that are against China, like being that were hard on China. And Trump is kind of trying to pretend to be hard on China. But that, I would go to that event and watch what I presented there, and then let's talk about it in the Discord.
Sure thing. And I posted something in there. There was the reason I mentioned that there was a Time magazine article that came out after 2020 about how the secret shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election, talking about a lot of big corporations and social media companies coming together to suppress anything that might do something similar to what happened with Hillary Clinton, where the servers investigation by the FBI came out again, but it was suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story, and how they basically bragged that they saved the election by suppressing information. So
but all of
that
has nothing to do with election administration. I just don't understand why we're
not the administration. I agree with you there.
Yeah, it was more about influencing the election. But you were saying that you didn't think big news should be shared near election. So do you think that Comey was right to reopen the investigation publicly right before the election?
No, I'm saying the opposite. I think it's fine for news to come out right before the election about whether it's something about Trump, whether it's something about the Biden or Hillary. I think that's fine.
All news should be able to be fair game, even if it's like very irrelevant to the presidential election, but it still might influence people's votes.
Of course.
Yeah, why not?
Or that it is potentially going to influence people's votes on the presidential election.
Comey wasn't the National Enquirer, right? He wasn't some tabloid magazine.
That election was hundreds of thousands of votes of difference, and there was But anyway, Fred,
I think people should be able to make informed decisions. I agree with that.
Fred, go ahead.
Thanks, Garrett, for hosting this, and thanks to the panelists for entering the lion's den here. My question has to do with stylistic issues, which were briefly alluded to, but not in any great detail, and the effect of that. I still think that the best book on presidential campaigns is Theodore White's 1960 classic, The Making of the President, in 1960, because John Kennedy was the first media president, and that changed everything. You could say that the difference in that election was that Nixon in the debate sweated like a pig, and Kennedy was cool and calm, and that might have been what was the margin of for the election. And 60 years later, we just built on that to the point where there's a widespread perception that political positions kind of irrelevant to winning an election. That political positions are determined increasingly, the perception is, by media handlers and focus groups and the like. And that for a lot of people of all sorts of different persuasions, it was just a welcome relief that here was a candidate uh, who uh, who spoke without a filter, which I think everybody could agree with, that nobody handled him. He was just a loose cannon on the campaign trail, attack anybody at any time for any reason, and that people actually appreciated that to a great extent, that kind of candor. And I wonder for those of the panelists, how much do you think that is a factor, and do you think that that'll carry forward not just with Trump but with both parties as they continue that kind of candor? You think that'll become prominent in future elections? Thank you.
I think you're already seeing it because for those who haven't been following Mamdani in New York City, there was that moment where there was a panel and they asked, what is the first country that you're going to visit after you get elected mayor? And down the line, all the politicians said Israel, 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 which was weird. And it was like they were phoning home to the mothership. And then Mamdani said, I'm going to stay in New York City. And he went against the grain. And there was kind of a similar moment with Trump, too, where he was like, I think the question was, would you support another candidate if they won? And he said, fuck no. I don't like what they stand for. And I think you are definitely going to see more of that because there's resentment towards, if not the government itself, the GOP and the DNC. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think that's why you have overlap between people who would wanted to vote for Bernie and they voted for Trump instead because they were denied Bernie as an option. I know when I brought that up last time, Garrett said basically the DNC won within their set of rules for that, but I don't think that's what even Garrett wanted the outcome to be, and I don't think that's what people wanted the outcome to be. So yeah, yeah, it's within the rules, but they unfortunately they increasingly want to throw a middle finger up to these establishments, I think. But
yeah, unfortunately, Hillary did win fair and square based on the voting, the way that votes were done, even though some electors changed their vote. But yeah, it's not who I wanted to win. I liked Bernie too. So, he's someone that speaks to me without a filter, but also advocates for fairness amongst everybody, and I really like that about him. But anyway, it's not so. I want to let a couple more people go. We're going to run a little bit over tonight. We normally don't run over, but this is kind of a special event, so I'm gonna either let my wife put the kids to bed or they're gonna stay up a little extra late. So not sure which. Sean, do you mind going a little bit shorter because you spoke before, but I do want to let you go. Just try to keep it concise.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of good points discussed. I learned some things that I wasn't aware, like China influencing the election. Anyway, the immigration part wasn't discussed as much. That is a big issue on Trump supporters, which I think he is doing something on that, which is maybe impressive, and especially illegal immigration. And the second thing is the Islamic terrorism. He seemed more like tough on Islamic terrorism. Kamala Harris or Joe Biden would be soft, and I don't think they would have had the balls to bomb Iran with the B-2 bombers, the nuclear site. So those are, that being said, I do, I cannot support Trump on the generic issue or socioeconomic aspects of it. It's just that disappointment that I see from the left leaders and the subgroups within the left that make me go away from the left and vote for Trump. Yeah, that's I rest my case. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I would encourage you to go to our YouTube video on immigration. I learned a lot doing the research for that. I learned actually that immigrants are actually less likely to cause crime, less likely to be terrorists, and pay 4 times as much tax as non-immigrants. So if we want to get rid of the troublesome people in society, we should be leaving the immigrants here and get rid of all the rest of us. But I encourage you to watch that video. Don't take
Yeah,
my
but
word at it.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
immigrants are really what America is made of historically, and they're the model citizens
No,
for the most part.
it's not about legal migration. Legal migration is fine. Illegal migration should be curtailed. He has been tough on, unlike any other previous presidents. That's what admirable about him.
Got it.
Yeah.
Charles, go ahead.
Okay. One thing is like, how would you reverse engineer America? Speaking as a Brit, like, basically, I would have shut America down in 1969 or 1970 once you landed a man on the moon. After that, it was a bit of a sort of kind of capitalist nightmare kind of thing. So that's one thing, yeah.
Just close shop. We did a good job. We got on the
Yeah, but
moon.
you-
No more America.
and you really did, and you really did, and you saved the world from a really catastrophic kind of Russian communist kind of mad world. The other thing is, like, again, reverse engineering wise, would you want to work for Trump, or would you want to be him, or would you have
It's a great question.
believed him to be the best person throughout his entire career in the sort of media? Do you mean, at what point would you have chosen Trump to be the best guy for the job? And the answer might be that he is a tough kind of con man, basically, with no judgment. I'm not saying this is judgmental way. He's a tough con man, and that's what America needs, because America is a tough, democratic kind of machine that makes things and does things in the world. Do you mean? And it's quite exciting and it's good fun. You know. The other thing I would just briefly, mention
Charles,
is that, sorry.
Let's let them answer the question of whether they would work for Trump. I think that's a great question. I don't know if any Trump supporters are welcome to jump in. So, would you work for Donald Trump, and why?
Well, first off,
the question of work for him personally or for the government?
Just say yes or no.
No.
You have to give the context, Charles. Ask which context.
I'll just make my own interpretation of it. First off, Charles, you Proto-American, British, we love you. English common law.
Just get on with it.
Birthplace of liberalism, John Locke. So it's great. We owe you a debt.
Get on with it.
We'll come save your country. We know it's getting rough over there.
Get on with it. Get on with it, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I would for the experience, but working for Trump, I'm sure he has such a revolving door of who he has in there, but I'm sure it would be exciting and wild and interesting to work for him. So yeah, I would do it.
I'm curious why you think that revolving door is there.
I think he's very fickle, and when something's not working out, he just gets rid of them and pulls the next person in.
Is that like your idea of a model leader?
Depends on what the objective is. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes fail fast. Sometimes if something's not working, change things up.
Well, some of these people have been with him for years, but as soon as they disagree with him, they're out the door, right? It's not about whether or not they've been with him a long time. It's just that when they disagree with him, they're out the door. So should a leader fire anyone that disagrees with them?
In some cases, Garrett, I agree with you. I think he can be very short with people. He demands a lot of loyalty, but he doesn't always have as much with his people.
And in the FTI, our loyalty is to truth and fairness, and that's the difference, and that's why Trump doesn't follow our values.
He would not follow your chatbot. I agree. It would.
Neil, go ahead. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm wearing my Trump hat. I don't know if you can see that.
There you go.
But I did vote for Trump. I thought at the time that he was the best option. And one thing I didn't like about Kamala is that she wasn't elected in the primaries. That bothered me. It seemed a little unfair for somebody who didn't win the primaries to then all of a sudden be on the ticket to be voted for president. Just didn't quite seem like we haven't done that in the past years. Anyway, just my thoughts.
Yeah, I thought democracy was on the ticket this time.
Democrats really
elected. That's the joke.
Yeah, Democrats really blew it. We haven't had a broker convention, I think, since the 60s, or possibly even earlier than that. It would have been a spectacle. It would have dominated the news cycle. and the electors could have they probably wouldn't have chose Kamala. It might have been who's the lady, Elizabeth Warren, might have been somebody like that. But they blew it. I mean, they had a chance to have this big spectacle and take over the news and put somebody in who was elected by the Electoral College, and they decided just to insert this person in the position and ignore the electors. Actually, they strong-armed the electors to make sure that she would win on the first ballot. So I think the Democrats really messed up.
Well, and I would ask other people on here that if Trump is so existential of a threat to democracy and to this country, wouldn't it be really important to make sure that the leader that you're proposing and putting forward is like the strongest possible candidate and not Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, whose brains turned to applesauce? Like, we could have done better. I mean, Bernie Sanders was a super popular candidate. And I think, in fact, a lot of people who wanted Bernie Sanders to win that election ended up going to Trump after he dropped out of there. So it just seems contradictory that he's both Hitler, but we're going to put our weakest candidates to fight him.
I don't know that, I don't know that Democrats would agree she was a weak candidate, but Hubert Humphrey won the nomination without winning any primaries, and that's why Democrats reformed their nominating process because they sort of realized that was a flaw. But this is not, Kamala Harris was not the first one to have that happen. And in that case, I don't think it was an immediate dropout of the incumbent president. It was a different flaw in their primary process that I didn't get into in detail on quick research. But I just wanted to say it's happened before, and I would have loved for the Democrats to choose Bernie. I think that would have been a wiser choice. But I also think Kamala was coached to not, rock the apple cart. And I think that woman is a fireball. And if you've ever seen her, actually, when she's in her norm, she would have run circles around Trump, but she was coached to not do it and to not be aggressive. And I believe, and I think that was to the Democrats' flaw. Like I think she would have been, you would have understood what she stood for if she actually spoke up. She didn't speak up. She didn't say anything meaningful. She was like a typical politician, and that's not who she normally is. So anyway, sorry, I don't mean to digress. But Howard, thank you, Neil. And Neil's a member of the FTI, so great to have you, Neil. Hope you don't mind my saying that. But Howard, would love to hear from you, and then we'll go to Sarah, and then we'll kind of close out so that I can, yeah, finish up. Oh, you're on mute, Howard. Howard Gibson. You're on mute, Howard. Let me ask you to unmute.
There we go.
Yeah,
About
go ahead.
years ago, the mayor of Toronto was Mel Lastman. Mel Lastman actually started a discount store chain, and people who do discount furniture and appliance store chain, people like that are usually portrayed as crazy, and Mel Lastman was crazier than that. Publicity stuff, the whole bit. But he got into politics, became an alderman, became mayor of North York. When they amalgamated the city, he became mayor of Toronto. He wasn't a lawyer like most politicians are. He shot his mouth off all the time. You knew what he was thinking. You found out almost immediately whether you liked it or not. But he was actually a decent mayor. He was a competent guy. And the important difference between guys like Mel Lastman and Donald Trump is that Mel Lastman didn't lie. I mean, you know what Donald Trump is thinking, but it's not necessarily the truth. It's very likely not the truth. I'm just looking at Truth Social. Apparently, he's got Venezuela surrounded by the U.S. Navy, and they're about to be crushed. It's just how you want to run things.
Yeah,
is the primary system in the United States is your elections are too damn expensive, and I think your primary system is making that. If the parties got together and held a meeting in a smoky back room and picked a candidate, you, the voter, get to decide whether that candidate gets to be president or not. And that will put a control on how idiotic the political party is going to be when they pick somebody.
Unfortunately, we only have two parties, and if they're both idiots, then we're screwed. So I don't like that solution.
If one party are idiots, another party isn't, they're going to pay for it dearly.
That's true, but if they're both idiots, then we're screwed. And that's why most of us like transparency. We don't want backdoor arrangements. That said, I do think our election process is very flawed. And I think, we should have another event on the election process and how I think it should work. Because I think we should have public funding for elections and just a fixed budget and not allow people to donate. This whole super PAC money has brought legalized corruption into America. And if giving money is free speech, then my employer is allowed to give me free money. I'm allowed to give my employees, clearly free speech isn't taxable. And if free speech isn't taxable, and giving money as free speech, then, well, suddenly the government isn't allowed to collect taxes anymore. So great Republicans, you get what you wanted. Now government's not allowed to collect any tax, and the whole government's got to shut down. And we're no longer going to have working roads, police, firemen, none of that, because why can you can't tax free speech, clearly. So clearly, Citizens United is nonsense. We had another event on that for anyone that wants to hear it, but that's my Cliff Notes version. Sarah, go ahead, and then we're gonna shut down.
I'll just say I
Oh,
agree.
sorry, if you want to respond, Sean, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I agree with you on the Citizens United thing. I think that's
Thank
totally.
you. Glad we agree on that. Sarah, go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of say the same thing, bank on all of that. I think Trump being elected is just, it's zooming out and helping a lot of people focus on things that are really broken in the system. And for me, at least, that's what, because I kept thinking to myself, why is this happening? Like, why is Trump, how did he get in office? Like, the more I asked that question, I was like, okay, this system is broken. And I went on deep dives and, Citizens United. So I think it would be really great for you to have something on that.
We did do a Citizens United. We may do it again because it's almost worth doing again, but we have a lot of other ones that we have one on feminism that's hopefully on the radar screen. So we have a lot of important topics that we haven't covered yet that we need to get to. And so I would invite the Trump
Lobbying, maybe.
supporters to come to that one on feminism so that we can talk about what feminism really is as opposed to what feminism is accused of being. Because we try to use the terms that people self-identify with and that actually align with what really happens, which is the most important part. Because even if someone self-identifies with a definition, if it's not really what they're doing, then I'm not going to use that definition. I'm going to use the definition of what they're doing in practice most of the time. So that said, I do want to close out, but I want to especially thank the panel of Trump supporters. Like, you guys are awesome. So quick round of applause for the Trump supporters. All of the Trump supporters, not just the ones on the panel. Thank you guys for sharing your truth. I understood better why you supported Trump. I hope other people did too. I hope you guys also understood why people don't support Trump. And I hope that you guys learned something about that perspective as well. I think too often people get emotional in these conversations, and we did get a little heated there for a while. We had to moderate a little bit, but I would say it was overall pretty polite. And I hope there was a lot of education, there was a lot of sharing of information. I think we learned that we rely on different sources, and that sometimes the very aspect of what is truth was that question. And when we have that question of what is truth, that's what our event on what's it called? Epistemology is going to be about. We're going to talk about how do we come to believe that something is true. And so I'm putting that link in. It's in 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to have a spirit of Christmas conversation. So, maybe I should do spirit of the holidays and cover all holidays. I think I posted it as Christmas, but I kind of care about all holidays, to be honest. But I want to get into the spirit of what the holidays around the end of the year are about, not about as the South Park episode that I saw in college was, what's Christmas about? Presents. No, it's not all about presents. There's more to it. So let's talk about what Christmas, Hanukkah, we can even hit Kwanzaa if we can, what those events are about next week. Would love to see you guys at next week's event. Would love to hear from you guys as potential members of the FTI. And want to thank everybody for their comments, contributions. They were all valued, even though some of them didn't feel valued. They were valued by a lot of us. And I just want to thank everybody for practicing our listening to understand and sharing our, practicing those six intentions, which I think even though we didn't agree all the time, we did all practice the six intentions. We shared our truths with each other. We listened to each other with an open mind. And I think with more dialogue, we would probably come to more agreement than we did tonight in this one time with 100 people on the line. And I honestly think that we need to do this again. So I would love to have a quick show of hands of people that think that we should do this again, or like thumbs up if you think we should do this again. Because personally, I thought it was valuable. So I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up and hands up. So I think we will do this again. I think it's important that we hear each other out. We need to have peaceful dialogue about politics, and I want to bring peace into these divisive conversations so that we can have these conversations not only in this group, but also with our friends and family in a way that's more about listening, but also we have to be able to share our truth with each other. Not just one directional communication in any way, shape, or form. We have to share our truth with each other. So thank you all, and I hope everybody has a great night and or day, depending on where you are. Some people are in Australia, so and hope to see you guys next week. And if not, definitely the week after on how do we come to truth. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.